Hello. My name is Theo Morales, and I'm 25 years old. I live in a quiet suburb just outside Denver, Colorado, in a small ground floor apartment that's seen better days. The walls are thin, the carpet is worn, and the only thing that really feels like home is the old coffee maker that gurgles every morning like it's complaining about life is too hard. I work construction, hauling bricks, mixing cement, whatever the site needs. My hands are always rough, cracked from the cold and the grit, and by the end of the day my shirt is stiff with dust and sweat. It's honest work, the kind that leaves you too tired to think about much else. Life hasn't been kind, but it hasn't been cruel either, just steady in its quiet way of wearing you down. My dad died when I was 18, a heart attack that came out of nowhere and left my mom staring at bills she couldn't pay. I dropped out of community college to help, picking up shifts wherever I could. Mom's better now, living with my aunt a few hours away, but those nights when she used to cry in the kitchen still echo in my head. I learned early not to expect much from people or from tomorrow. You show up, you do the work, you go home. That's been my routine for years. I never thought anything would shake it up. That afternoon, the sky was a dull gray, the kind of light that makes everything feel muted and heavy. I'd just finished a long shift on the site, my boots caked in mud, my back aching from lifting rebar all day. I stopped at the little grocery store on the corner, the one with the flickering neon sign and shelves that always smell faintly of old bread and cleaning supplies. Soft jazz was playing low over the speakers, something slow and melancholy that fit the empty aisles perfectly. I was there for the basics, a box of instant noodles, some eggs, maybe a cheap beer if I felt like treating myself. I was wandering past the cereal aisle, half lost in my own head, when I heard the crash. A shopping basket tipped over, boxes scattering across the floor like they'd given up too. Cereal spilled everywhere, rolling under shelves. There was a woman standing there, frozen, her hand still on the handle like she couldn't believe what she'd done. She wore a long coat that looked too elegant for this place, high heels that tilted slightly as if her balance had slipped along with everything else. She was slim, graceful even in that moment, with dark hair pulled back loosely. I'd guess late 30s, maybe 39. Her face was pale, eyes distant, like she was somewhere else entirely. I could have kept walking. People do that all the time. Pretend they don't see someone else's mess. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way she just stood there, shoulders sagging, not from the basket, but from something heavier. I crouched down without thinking, starting to pick up the boxes, stacking them back neatly. She didn't move at first. Then her voice came out, soft and cracked, like glass about to shatter. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be falling apart like this here. I glanced up. Her eyes were red-rimmed, glistening. She wrapped her arms around herself, voice barely above a whisper. I begged him not to leave. But maybe my words never meant a damn thing anyway. It hit me hard. Not because I knew her story, I didn't, but because I'd heard that tone before. In my mom's voice after Dad's funeral. In my own head on nights when the apartment felt too empty and the weight of everything pressed down. The kind of broken that doesn't scream, just leaks out quietly. I kept picking up the boxes, not rushing, giving her space. Then I said, quiet, I don't know what happened, but I do know the people who cry in public like this. They're the ones who've been holding it together way too long. She looked at me, then really looked, like she was seeing me for the first time. Surprise flickered in her eyes, mixed with something raw and unguarded. The hardness softened, just a fraction. She turned to walk away, grabbing what was left in her basket, but paused a few steps later. What's your name? Theo. I'm Sophie. Her voice steadied a little, though it still trembled at the edges. She hesitated, then added, If you live around here, could I borrow your shoulder for a minute? I'm just so tired. I stood there, boxes in my hands, feeling the weight of the moment settle between us. It wasn't dramatic or movie-like, just two strangers in a quiet store, both carrying things we didn't ask for. And in that gray afternoon light with the jazz humming softly, something shifted. I didn't know it yet, but that was the start. The moment a woman who seemed so put together and a guy like me, covered in sight dust, found each other at our lowest. Not because we were looking, but because sometimes that's when life decides to step in. That same evening, after I'd showered off the day's grime and thrown on a clean shirt, I found myself standing outside her apartment building. It was only a few blocks from the job site, in one of those older brick complexes with creaky stairs and dim hallway lights. I hesitated at the door, wondering what the hell I was doing. She was a stranger, someone who'd cracked open in a grocery store aisle, and here I was, showing up because she'd asked to borrow a shoulder. But something in her voice, that raw exhaustion, had stuck with me. I'd felt it too many times not to recognize it. I knocked lightly. The door opened almost immediately, like she'd been waiting. Sophie looked different now, hair down, wearing a loose sweater and jeans, no makeup gone, revealing faint lines around her eyes that only made her seem more real. She managed a small smile, stepping aside. "You came?" "Yeah," I said, stepping in. Couldn't really say no. The apartment was small but felt like her. Warm, layered, alive in a quiet way. Canvases leaned against walls, some half-finished with bold strokes of color, others blank like they were waiting for courage. The air smelled of cinnamon tea and oil paint mixed with something earthy like turpentine. A single lamp cast a soft glow over a worn couch and a coffee table cluttered with brushes and sketches. It wasn't messy, it was lived in, the kind of place where creativity had once thrived and was now trying to breathe again. She motioned to the couch. "Sit. I'll make tea." I nodded, sinking into the cushions while she moved to the kitchenette. The silence wasn't awkward, it was necessary, like both of us needed a moment to adjust. I watched her hands as she poured water, steady but deliberate, like every motion cost a little extra effort tonight. When she came back with two mugs, steam rising and lazy curls, she sat across from me in an armchair, tucking her legs under her. "You don't have to talk if you don't want," I said, taking the mug. It was hot, comforting. She stared into hers for a long moment, then let out a breath that sounded like it had been held for years. "His name was David. We were married for 12 years. He was successful. Gallery owner, always networking, always charming in public. But at home, it was different. Cold, like I was just another piece in his collection, nice to look at, but not worth the maintenance." I listened, not interrupting. She'd probably told this story before, or maybe never. Either way, it spilled out now, quiet and steady. "He started pulling away a couple years ago. Late nights that turned into whole weekends. I told myself it was work. Then the divorce papers came. 3 years of fighting over everything, the house, the savings, the gallery we'd built together. It was my dream first, you know. I painted before I met him. He turned it into a business, and when he left, he took that too. Said I wasn't ambitious enough anymore." Her voice cracked on the last part, but she didn't stop. "I thought if I stayed quiet, if I didn't fight too hard, he'd see what he was losing. But silence just made me invisible. He walked away like I was nothing." The words hung there heavy. I knew that feeling, the slow erasure of someone you love deciding you're not worth the effort. With Dad gone, Mom had faded for a while, like part of her left with him. I'd watched it happen, helpless. "You weren't nothing," I said finally, my voice low. "Sounds like he was the one who couldn't see." She looked up then, eyes searching mine. There was surprise in them, like she hadn't expected kindness without strings. "Why are you here, Theo? Really?" I shrugged, honest. "Because you asked, and because I've been where you are. Not the same story, but close enough. My dad died young. Left us with debts and a house we almost lost. Mom tried to hold it together, but some nights she'd just sit in the dark. I learned that sometimes people need someone to sit with them. Not fix it, just be there." Sophie nodded slowly, sipping her tea. The tension in her shoulders eased a fraction. We talked more after that, not deep dives, just pieces. She asked about my work, and I told her about the job sites, the way hauling bricks until my back screamed, the satisfaction of seeing something solid rise from nothing. She laughed softly when I described mixing cement wrong once and turning a whole batch into soup. It was the first real smile I'd seen from her, small but genuine, lighting up her face in a way that made the room feel warmer. As the evening wore on, the conversation drifted. She showed me one of her paintings, a stormy seascape, dark blues and grays swirling like chaos barely contained. This was right after he left, she said. I couldn't sleep, so I painted. It's powerful, I said, meaning it. Like it's still moving. She set the canvas down, closer to me this time. Our hand brushed accidentally, and neither of us pulled away immediately. The air shifted, subtle but there, a quiet pull. But we didn't push it. When I left that night, the sky had cleared a little, stars peeking through the clouds. She walked me to the door. Thank you, she said simply. Anytime. The days after that blurred into a pattern I never saw coming. I'd finish work, clean up as best I could, and find myself at her door. Sometimes with takeout bagels or fresh bread from the bakery down the street. Sometimes with nothing but time. She'd let me in without question, and we'd sit. She'd paint while I watched, mesmerized by how her brush moved, deliberate, alive. Or we'd talk. She opened up more about the gallery, how it had been her escape, her identity, and losing it felt like losing herself. I shared too, about Mom's slow recovery, about quitting school to work, about feeling stuck but not knowing how to move. You're building things, she'd say, gesturing to my calloused hands. That's not stuck. That's foundation. Little by little, the walls came down. Not with grand gestures, but with presence. Her smiles came easier. My nights felt less empty. It was like we'd found this fragile space where neither of us had to pretend anymore. And in that space, something real started to grow. Quiet, unexpected, but undeniable. As the weeks turned into months, our routine became something I never knew I looked forward to. I'd get off work, the sun dipping low over the Denver skyline, my muscles sore but my mind already drifting to her door. Sophie would be there, often mid-stroke on a canvas, paint smudged on her fingers or a streak across her cheek. She'd look up when I knocked, that smile creeping in slower now, warmer, like it was just for me. We'd eat simple dinners, pasta from a box or sandwiches I'd pick up on the way, sitting on her couch with plates balanced on our knees, talking about nothing and everything. She started painting again, really painting. Not the stormy chaos from before, but softer things. Sunsets over the Rockies, quiet streets in the rain, faces half hidden in shadow. I'd sit and watch, handing her brushes when she needed them, feeling useless but content just being in the room. Some nights, she'd lean over and kiss my cheek, casual at first, then lingering longer each time. Other nights, we'd end up closer, her head on my shoulder, my arm around her, the TV flickering with some old movie neither of us was watching. It felt easy, natural. Like we'd skipped the awkward parts and landed in something real. But nothing stays easy forever. The pull. The more time we spent together, the more I noticed the little things that reminded me we weren't on the same page in life. She'd talk about exhibitions she'd done in her 20s, travels to Paris for art shows, friends who'd moved on to families and careers. I'd listen, nodding, but inside I'd feel that gap. 14 years, a whole lifetime of experiences I hadn't touched yet. I was still figuring out how to build something stable while she'd already built and lost it all. One evening about 2 months in, it boiled over. I'd shown up after a rough day on the site. A beam had slipped, nearly taking out a guy's leg, and the foreman had chewed everyone out. I was tense, covered in more dust than usual, needing the quiet of her place to unwind. She was in the zone, painting furiously, but she stopped when I walked in, sensing my mood. We sat with tea like always, but the air felt heavier. She set her mug down abruptly, staring at the canvas like it had betrayed her. "Theo," she said, voice low, "do you ever think you're wasting your youth on someone pushing 40? The question landed like a punch to the gut. I froze, mug halfway to my lips. She'd said it casually, but her eyes gave her away, guarded, scared. I put the mug down, buying time, standing to pace the small living room. The floor creaked under my boots, echoing my thoughts. "Wasting?" I repeated, turning to her. "Is that what you think this is?" She wouldn't look at me. "I'm serious. You're 25. You should be out there, dating girls your age, partying, building a life without baggage." "I've got scars, Theo. Divorce, a career in ruins, years of therapy just to get out of bed some days. What if I'm holding you back?" Her words cut deep because part of me had wondered the same in quiet moments. Driving home late, seeing groups of people my age laughing outside bars, living light and free. But then I'd think of her, of the way she made the world feel less heavy, and the doubt vanished. I walked back, kneeling in front of her chair so we were eye level. Listen to me. Nothing about you feels like a waste. You've made me happier than I've been in years, even when you're not trying. You think age matters? I've dated girls my age. It was fun, sure, but it was surface. With you, Isa, it's different. You see me. The real me, not the guy hauling bricks. She shook her head, eyes glistening. I've lost too much already. The gallery, David. Pieces of myself I don't know if I'll get back. I can't be the one who hurts you too. What if you wake up in 5 years from now and regret this? Regret me? The fear in her voice mirrored my own buried ones. The fear of loss, of pouring yourself into someone only to watch them walk. Like mom after dad. Like Sophie with her ex. I took her hands, rough against her soft ones. Then give me the choice, I said, voice steady despite the knot in my throat. If I choose you and I am choosing you, will you stay? Will you let yourself have this? She searched my face, silent for what felt like forever. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but she didn't pull away. Finally, she whispered, I'm scared, Theo, terrified. But yes, if you're sure. I pulled her into a hug then, holding her as she let go a little more. It wasn't a fix, it was a beginning. The days after that weren't perfect. The doubt lingered, popping up in quiet moments. She'd pull back sometimes, questioning if she was selfish for wanting this. I'd catch myself wondering if I was enough for someone who'd seen so much more of the world. But we talked it out, raw and honest, no games. Age became the elephant in the room we learned to sit with, not hide from. And in those talks, something shifted deeper. Kisses turned from tentative to needing. Nights blurred into mornings where I'd wake with her beside me, tracing patterns on my arm. The pull was undeniable now, a quiet fire building. But so was the fear that made us hold tighter, choose harder. We were in it, really in it. And for the first time, the gap didn't feel like a wall. It felt like a bridge we were building, one honest conversation at a time. One day, everything came crashing down harder than I expected. It was a Thursday, nothing special about it, just another shift ending, with the usual ache in my shoulders and dust in my hair. I texted Sophie that morning something simple like, see you after work? And she'd replied with a heart emoji, the way she did when things felt good between us. I smiled at my phone all day, counting down the hours. When I got to her building, the lights in her window were off. That wasn't unusual. She sometimes painted in the dim light or took naps when inspiration hit a wall. I knocked, waited. No answer. Knocked again, louder this time. Nothing. My stomach twisted a little. I tried the door, locked. I called her phone, straight to voicemail, texted. No bubbles, no read receipt. Panic started creeping in, the kind that makes your skin prickle. I paced the hallway, calling again, leaving messages that probably sounded desperate. Sophie, pick up. I'm outside. Are you okay? Memories flooded back. Dad's sudden collapse. Mom's calls going unanswered when she was at her lowest. I couldn't shake the fear that something was wrong, really wrong. I waited an hour, sitting on the steps, staring at the building manager or neighbors. No one had seen her. Finally, I drove around, checking the grocery store, the park where she sometimes sketched. Nothing. My mind raced to the worst places. Around dusk, my phone buzzed, an unknown number. It was the hospital. Sophie had collapsed at home. A neighbor found her and found her unconscious on the floor. Low blood pressure, exhaustion, the doctor said. Stress-related. She'd been pushing too hard, hiding how bad it had gotten. I sped there, heart pounding the whole way, barely registering red lights or traffic. The hospital smell hit me like a wave. Antiseptic, bleach, that fake clean hiding sickness. I found her room after what felt like forever, pushing past nurses who tried to slow me down. She was there, hooked to an IV, pale against the white sheets, eyes closed. Monitors beeping steady, but too loud in the quiet. I stood in the doorway, frozen. She looked small, fragile in a way I'd never seen. The woman who'd painted storms and held herself together through hell was lying there, like life had finally won around. Her eyes fluttered open as I stepped closer. She saw me and tried to smile, but it wobbled. Theo, you shouldn't see me like this. I pulled the chair up, sat, and took her hand, cold, but squeezing back weakly. I should see you every way, especially like this, because I want to be the one here when you can't hide anymore. Tears welled up immediately, spilling over. She turned her face away, ashamed. I'm a mess. The divorce stress, the gallery memories, it all caught up. Doctor said my body's shutting down from holding it in too long. I didn't want you to know how weak I am. Weak? I leaned in, voice fierce but soft. You've been carrying everything alone for years. That's not weak, that's surviving. And now, you don't have to do it alone. She cried then, really cried. Silent sobs shaking her shoulders, the kind that come from deep down where the pain lives. I held her hand tighter, climbing onto the bed edge to wrap an arm around her carefully, mindful of the tubes. She buried her face in my shirt, soaking it. You don't owe me anything, she whispered through tears. You're young, Theo. You have your whole future, dreams, someone without all this damage. Go live it. Don't tie yourself to someone who's already broken. Her words broke something in me. I pulled back just enough to look at her, wiping tears with my thumb. Listen to me. I don't see broken. I see you. The woman who paints like the world's on fire, who listens to my stupid stories like they matter, who makes me feel like I'm more than just a guy with calluses. My future, if it's without you in it, it's not one I want. She stared, eyes wide, searching for the lie and not finding it. I've chosen you, Sophie. Every day since that grocery store, the age, the past, none of it changes that. I want the messy parts too, the hospital visits, the bad days, all of it. Because the good days with you, they're worth everything. She sobbed harder but nodded, pulling me close again. We stayed like that for hours, me holding her while nurses came and went, the room growing dark outside. No big declarations, just truth laid bare. When she finally slept, exhausted but peaceful, I sat there watching the monitors, feeling a certainty settle in my chest. This wasn't just love anymore, it was commitment. The kind you choose when it's hard, not when it's easy. And in that sterile room, with her hand in mine, I knew I'd choose it again and again. The days in the hospital blurred. I took time off work, brought her sketchbook so she could draw from bed, sat through tests and talks with doctors. She got better slowly, color returning, strength building. But more than that, something between us solidified. No more hiding the cracks, we were gluing them together piece by piece. When they discharged her, I drove her home, arm around her waist as we climbed the stairs. She leaned on me, not just physically. Thank you, she whispered at the door. Don't thank me, I said. Just let me stay. She did. And that was the turning point, the storm that cleared the air, leaving us stronger on the other side. Word count, 1002. Control, one ordinary afternoon turned into the kind of day that changes everything without warning. It had been a few weeks since that raw conversation about age and regret, and things between us had settled into a deeper rhythm. The doubt still whispered sometimes, but we'd learned to talk them out, holding each other a little tighter afterward. I'd started staying over more, my toothbrush finding a permanent spot next to hers, my work boots by the door like they belonged. Sophie was painting with new energy, planning that small art class for kids she'd always talked about. Life felt possible. I finished the site early that day, the crew wrapping up as storm clouds gathered over the mountains. I grabbed flowers from a roadside stand, nothing fancy, just wild flowers that reminded me of her paintings, and headed to her place, eager to see that smile. But when I got there, the apartment was dark. Curtains drawn, no light peeking through. I knocked, waited, knocked harder. Sophie? No answer. My heart started racing. I tried the door, locked. Called her phone, voicemail again. Texts went unread. Panic clawed up my throat, sharp and familiar, dragging me back to the day we'd gotten the call about Dad. I banged on the door, called her name louder, then ran to the building manager. He let me in with the spare key, face grim. The place was quiet, too quiet. Paintbrushes scattered on the table, a half-finished canvas on the easel, tea cold in a mug. She was on the floor in the bedroom, curled up, pale as the sheets. I dropped to my knees, checking her pulse, steady but weak. Sophie, wake up! She stirred faintly when I shook her shoulder, called 911, voice cracking as I gave the address. The operator kept me talking while I held her, wrapping her in a blanket, whispering it would be okay, even as fear choked me. The ambulance came fast, lights flashing against the darkening sky. I rode with her, holding her hand the whole way, paramedics working around us. At the hospital, they rushed her in, low blood pressure, severe dehydration, exhaustion compounded by stress. The doctor pulled me aside. She's been running on empty for too long, the body's way of saying stop. I waited in the hallway, pacing, fists clenched, blaming myself for not seeing the signs. The late nights she pushed through painting, the way she'd wave off headaches as nothing. When they finally let me in, she was awake, hooked to monitors and an IV, face drained of color, but eyes lighting up faintly when she saw me. Theo, her voice was hoarse, barely there. You shouldn't see me like this. Go home. I pulled the chair close, taking her hand carefully around the tubes. It was cool, fragile. I'm not going anywhere. I should see you like this, like every other way. Because I want to be the one here when you're not strong enough to hide it anymore. Her lip trembled. Tears welled up immediately, spilling over as she turned away. I'm sorry, I thought I could handle it. The memories, the divorce fallout, everything crashing at once. I didn't want to burden you. Burden? I leaned in, voice thick. You've never been a burden. You've been the best part of my days. She cried then, quiet sobs that shook the bed. The monitors beeping steady in the background. You don't owe me this, Theo. Nothing. You're young. You have a whole life ahead. Dreams, someone who isn't falling apart. Go find that. Don't stay out of pity. The words hit like bricks, heavy and bruising. I thought of all the times I'd almost walked away from us, scared of the gap, scared of hurting. But seeing her like this, vulnerable, real, it crystallized everything. I squeezed her hand harder. Pity? This isn't pity. I love you, Sophie. The real you, the strong parts, the broken ones. All of it. My future? If it's missing you, it's not worth having. I choose this. I choose us. She stared at me, tears streaming, searching my face for any doubt and finding none. You're sure? More than anything. She broke then, pulling me close as much as the wires allowed, sobbing into my shoulder. I held her, stroking her hair, letting her fall apart because she didn't have to hold it together alone anymore. The nurses gave us space, the room filling with that raw, healing kind of quiet. We talked through the night, about fears we'd buried, about how the divorce had left her doubting her worth, how Dad's death had made me afraid to attach. No walls left. Just truth. When she finally slept, exhausted but peaceful, I stayed, head on the bed rail, hand still in hers. The recovery wasn't instant. Days in the hospital turned to weeks of rest at home, me taking leave from work to care for her, making soups, helping with meds, sitting while she napped. But in that storm, something unbreakable formed. Love wasn't the easy moments anymore, it was this. The choice to stay when it hurt, to build on the ruins. And as she got stronger, leaning on me without shame, I knew. This was it. The real thing. No more running from the cracks. We were choosing each other, fully, fiercely. 6 months later, everything looked the same on the outside and completely different on the inside. Sophie had turned the spare bedroom into a little art studio for kids. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, the apartment filled with the chaos of 8 and 9-year-olds. Paint on the floor, laughter echoing off the walls, fingerprints on every surface. She glowed in the middle of it, hair tied up with a paintbrush, kneeling to show a shy boy how to mix purple without making mud. I'd come home from the site, still dusty, and stand in the doorway watching her like a man who couldn't believe his luck. I'd started night classes in sculpting, something I never would have dared before her. My hands, the same ones that carried bricks all day, were learning to shape clay into something that might last longer than a foundation wall. Some evenings I came home with clay under my nails and found her asleep on the couch, surrounded by tiny handprints on paper. I'd carry her to bed, kiss her forehead, and feel like the richest man in Denver. We lived together now, quietly, naturally. My boots stayed by the door. Her paints took over the living room table. My work jackets hung next to her long coats. We never made a big announcement, never felt the need. One day my toothbrush was just there forever, and that was that. One late spring afternoon, the kind where the air smells like cut grass and possibility, we climbed the narrow stairs to the rooftop of her building. It was the same place she'd brought me months earlier when she was still too scared to hope. The place where she'd first told me about the dreams she thought were dead. The sky was wide open, pale blue fading to gold at the edges. No rain in sight. We sat on the ledge, legs dangling, sharing a warm beer like we were 20 again. The city hummed below us, but up here it was only wind and the sound of our breathing.